Welcome to the Experience Matters podcast with your host, Clothier Sr., and your co-host, Kevin Homel.
Hello, everyone. This is Kent Clothier Sr. with the Experience Matters podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully, we're bringing you some outstanding content today. We have a really special segment today. We haven't done this yet. I've been waiting and looking forward to doing it. I'll get to the topic in just a second. I want to remind you that you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, or the Memphis Invest website. And on our memphisinvest.com website, just scroll down and you'll find the podcast there. Kevin, we're up to what number here today?
I think this is 24 or 25.
24 or 25. I'm joined today, as usual, by Kevin Homel, our co-host. And today we have the extreme pleasure of having two of my sons on the podcast this morning, Chris Clothier and Brett Clothier. They're both with us today. And so we're going to have a little family discussion today about some things that come up in family businesses and hear a lot from them this morning. And hopefully some of this content is good for you folks out there that may be in business with family members or sons or daughters or fathers or whatever the case may be. And so, Kevin, let's jump into this exciting topic this morning.
All right, we'll title this one the birthday episode since your birthday was yesterday. And what better to do on your...
Can we just forget my birthday, please? I'm trying to forget this, all right?
Can't do it. So happy birthday to Kent Sr., our fearless leader.
Thank you.
And welcome to Chris and Brett. So I thought today we'd talk about being in business with family. There's probably a lot of joy and gratification that goes along with that for you, but also the challenges that we all know and hear about, the horror stories of being in business, being in partnership in general with people, but then those people being in your family. So if you're all right with that, we'll dive into some of that.
Yeah, and let me just say a thing here. So our business, I've been lucky enough, I have three sons, Kent Jr., Chris and Brett, age from 32 to 48, 47, 48, Kent is. So a little bit different there. Kent works with us, but kind of out of our office on a lot of projects that he helps us with and vice versa. Chris and Brett and I work right here. Some of you are on the video and seeing this is a table that we all work at every day of the week. I spend about half my time here and half my time in Dallas. These guys are here every day. None of us have our own office. We have a conference table right here that seats about 10 or 12 people, and we have people in our conference room all day long that we're visiting and talking to from all the departments across these three buildings that we have here in Memphis that has about 55 to 60 employees. So this is our domain right here. This is not a setup. We're not setting up something for y'all for our guests to see or our listeners to see today. This is where we are every single day, Chris and I and Brett around this table talking about situations in our company, in our offices, in all the cities that we're in. So, Kevin, let's jump into it.
Yeah, before we dive in, I thought you'd find this funny. So normally the video is on you. This will be the first session that we've expanded the video to everybody. I had a call with a guy the other day in Oklahoma City and found out that I have a fan, which is good. So he said, I've listened to all of y'all's episodes. This is somebody we're actually interviewing. Wow. And I never have seen you. And so I thought that was pretty funny that I have one fan out there. And so out of our 10,000 plus listeners,
wondering who
is this Kevin
you were
guy?
at. All right, good. So, today on the video, we have everybody on there, and except for our producer, JJ, and our videographer, Ethan. So they're kind of behind the cameras and behind the microphone here, but jump into it, Kevin.
Yeah, so first question I want to ask, so this is aimed at you, and then if Chris and Brett want to dive in on as you expand on this, but there's all kinds of horror stories of family businesses, whether it's one generation to the next or whether it's just a startup that includes multiple members of the family. So I'm sure you were aware, you probably knew some people that had those experiences. What made you want to include Chris and Brett into this adventure?
Well, I don't know if I really wanted to or not. No, just kidding. The opportunity came about to where we could all join forces together. And of course, any parent would love to have their kids in business. I've been lucky enough to have been in business with Kent for a lot of his adult life and some of his teenage years. Chris, I've been lucky, and I think we've always been in business some shape or form since he's been an adult. And Brett, and this is really the only thing that Brett has ever done besides making a few salads at a restaurant back during the summer one year. But so I've had the great fortune of having all my kids working with me at some point in time, and now we seem to have everybody kind of working together here as a group. So that's a great thing.
So, Chris, you moved back from Colorado to be a part of this. Brett, you came into it right out of college. Thoughts on that? Going into business with Dad. What, Chris? You were already involved in some stuff out there. So, what was your what all thoughts were going on with you and getting involved with Kent Sr. and what is now a $100 million company?
Well, I had been involved in other companies already. I mean, I had done other stuff with my dad and older brother Kent since I was 17 when I first started doing data entry at one of his first companies he started. But I didn't actually come back to join the family business. I had been started my own company that I learned from Kent Sr. first in the grocery arbitrage in the diverting business, and then I had come back and was really trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I was doing some housing here in Memphis. Again, I learned a little bit from them, and I was actually contracting Kent Sr. and Brett with their company. I was actually using some of their services for my own business, and it was really Brett that gets all the credit for getting us kind of back together as a big group and get me to join in, because I think it was Brett that kind of realized that I had some, I don't know, maybe some talents that were missing over there at that group, and I certainly was I was already having to engage them in their services. So it was more a case of I learned a lot of how to be in business from Kent Sr. I learned a lot from older brother Kent, and learned just how to conduct myself and how to operate, that kind of thing. But it was really Brett that kind of recognized that, hey, we might be able to do something bigger if we can get, Chris to work with us and not necessarily on his own out there doing his own thing.
So, Brett, I'm not sure I've ever heard the full backstory of how it all actually formed. So heard what Chris just said. What was your early experience right out of college, and how did all that come together?
Well, my experience goes back way before college, Kevin. My dad alluded to it a second ago that the only thing I'd ever done was made salads. That's not entirely true. That's one of the things that I had done. One of the first things I did was mow yards, and I got that entrepreneurial spirit from our dad, of course. Seeing him ever since I was alive, he had never worked for anybody, so I thought that was normal. My dad wasn't the guy that, went to work 8 to 5 every day and complained about his boss every day. I had none of that in my life. I had the guy that worked for himself, did whatever it took to provide for the family. So that was normal to me, and it wasn't until I was much, much older that I realized that was not normal. And so when I was 16, as soon as I was able to drive, I started a lawn business, built it up to 20 or so yards that I would go cut during the summer, during the spring, early fall, when those yards were able to be cut. And what I found at that time is that I was different than everybody else, because at 16, not a lot of people are motivated. Not a lot of kids are motivated to get up, go to work, go make money, go cut the grass at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning before it gets to be noon and 95 degrees and humid. And the one thing that I taught myself during that time was that I really liked setting my own hours. I really liked doing what I wanted to do, and I did not want to work for anybody else. And like my dad said a minute ago, I learned that the hard way, working at a restaurant here in Memphis, where I was bussing tables, where I was making salads, where I was making potatoes. And if you've ever been in a restaurant, you know that that's the low guy on the totem pole, a busboy. And so what you quickly realize is that everybody there, you don't have one boss, you have 20 bosses. Everybody that's working during a restaurant that night is your boss. Go clean this floor, go clean this table, you're not doing it fast enough. The busboy's responsibility is the trash, to get in the dumpster, throw stuff away. You throw something away of a customer's on accident, you have to get in the dumpster. And so working at a restaurant taught me one thing that I knew for sure, and that's that I did not want to work for anybody. And that's probably the one most important lesson that I learned during that time period. Ultimately, I ended up going to college, I think like you or him said, and went to Ole Miss, started concentrating on real estate stuff, needed a side job on the side, worked for a collections agency just for about a month during one summer. Again, same thing, realized I did not like people telling me what to do. I didn't like answering to people. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And so that time, coincidentally, I started coming home on the weekends, riding around with our dad. He was getting the real estate thing really up and going. And so I talk about it a lot, that it's kind of a perfect storm. I was getting out of school. He was doing real estate. It really interests me. So that's when I really started taking those classes, real estate classes in college. And the joke between myself and my dad and my mom is that I was ready to get out. I had had enough, taking a class from some teacher, some older, more experienced, seasoned, typical real estate agent that you see out there on the street, that the only thing they know is on Sunday I'm going to sit at a house from 2 to 4 and hope people come in there and see what I can sell. And I knew quickly that I was not learning anything, and this is not my definition of where I wanted to be. And so that's when I started bugging them about, I'm ready to come home, I'm ready to go to work, you guys are wasting your time. I'm sitting here with advisors in school who don't know what they're doing with their career, but they're trying to advise you on what to do with yours. Sitting here with a real estate agent who sits at open houses on the weekend and, you know, prints a couple flyers and
Trying to teach you about business, right?
Exactly. So from that point, I pretty much zoned out of that real estate class. And I remember specifically 2 separate things from sitting in that class. One, the real estate teacher wanted every person to write down what they wanted to do in real estate when they got out of school. And the typical answers in that class were, I want to be, you know, the best real estate agent in my city. I want to be a commercial broker, all those types of answers. I was the only one in the class that said real estate investor. And this was back in 2006, you know, right, I guess during the crash, right before the crash. But I was the only one that said that. The other thing I remember is sitting in that class, writing down how many properties I'm going to own one day, what the cash flow is going to be from those houses one day, and what I'm going to be able to do, what kind of impact I'm going to be able to have when I do that. And so those are 2 things I specifically remember. And it, I think that really elevated my thinking from other people that I was around back then, because 21 and 22-year-olds typically don't think that way, especially in college, especially at a party college. They're thinking about what bar they're going to that night and what's going to happen to them. And I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking longer horizon, where that's going to go. So fast forward, ultimately graduated, came in, started working with my dad again, you know, and his mindset, his entrepreneurial spirit was really one thing that really helped me, because I didn't walk in that first day after I graduated and he said, all right, here's the handbook, go study it. Here's exactly what you do. It's all right, here's what I've done. Here's how I've been successful. Let's go figure out how to make money. Let's go figure out how to grow it. And, you know, somebody told me a long time ago, the good thing about not having experience is that you can be different and you can be creative. And I think that's what we were. There was no there's no turnkey real estate company model that we were sitting there following. It's, how do we go buy more houses? How do we do what other people aren't doing? And so that's kind of
doing or aren't willing to do.
Exactly. Aren't willing to do.
So fast forward now to, let's call it 2010 or 11. It starts to, you guys are obviously all 3 in the same place at that point. It's becoming evident that it's scalable. And then you start bringing in some people that aren't family. So you bring in some of your college friends, and then I'd really even call those guys family. But you get to where you've got to bring in, like myself, you're bringing in Drew Dawkins, some technology focus, some sales focus, and all that. How tough was it for you guys as a family to say, all right, to take it from where it's at to the next level? Now we've got to really start bringing in different kinds of people. And any one of y'all take that one.
Chris, you want to jump in there on that one when it started to scale?
How difficult was it?
How difficult was it making the decision to bring in non-family members, people that had those specific skill sets, because at that point it was mostly you guys and college friends of Brett and people you knew really, really closely.
I don't remember it being difficult really at all. We were, when you're bringing in other people, you trust them. They've got a skill set that you don't have. It's one of the questions that people that are getting started in business or want to be entrepreneurs, that one of the big questions that they have is, when do I hire? Who do I hire? What am I supposed to do? And so there's a common narrative of you hire what you don't like doing. So you take something you don't like doing, and you go find somebody that'll do it, and you give it to them, and then you concentrate on what you like doing. And that's okay especially for people that are early and getting started and may not have a lot of experience yet in building a business. But the reality, if you dig deeper, is you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Ken Sr. said that to us probably 1,000 times at this point. And so when you have to build a computer system and you want to build a network and frame and figure out how to connect with people or how to put processes in place and customer service and tie all this stuff together, you go find somebody that is the best at what they do. For us, we found a Salesforce expert that we had applications from literally all over the world that wanted that particular position. So we hired somebody, not that we didn't want to do, but somebody that was way smarter than us. When you bring in somebody that's going to head up your accounting or modernize your HR or create, again, systems that you may not have in place that day, you don't just go find somebody because you don't want to do it. You find somebody that's the best at that, somebody that's smarter than you at the solution you're trying to put in place. And that's all we did. And when you realize that, then so the difficulty of bringing somebody in, that wasn't difficult at all. You're looking for somebody that's smarter than you that you can trust. Now, giving them day-to-day operation and really listening to them and trusting them, that's only built over time. That's taken us forever. We still don't trust everybody we have hired here today.
Well, that's one of the reasons I asked you that question, because I knew
and if anybody
how
works for us
you would
listening
answer
to
it.
that, I was just totally kidding.
That's right.
We
Yeah,
trust everyone.
No, I knew how you would answer that question because I know we've talked about it, Kent and I, on other episodes, where those are the main launching points for the next level of growth in a company. And I think some of the listeners out there, based on some questions that we got, they struggle with that point in their growth. Everything is theirs up to a certain point, and then they bring in a couple more people, and everything is that small group. But then there's a major decision point if you want to take it to 2, 3, 10 times growth. You've got to be doing that kind of thing. So I think that's a good story for everybody out there to hear.
But we had to go find people that didn't think like us, that weren't like us, and that are going to bring a different perspective to the table like you do. And I tell her all the time that you and I are completely opposite. And
that is true.
Your background in leadership and banking and all of that is much more sophisticated than mine is. Mine is just, as an entrepreneur, we just go. All right, we just go. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall in it sometimes. Sometimes we're going to, but for whatever it is, for 12, 13 years, it's worked. And then we had to go find somebody really, really smart with Drew, our IT guy. And then we expanded into Texas and gave more opportunities like Ryan. And then it just keeps growing. Some of the people have been grown internally. Some people have come from the outside. And those are just as important as the people that we have in. But we realized early on that we had to go find, if we were going to scale this thing to 300, 400, 600, 700 houses a year, which we're doing now, that we had to go surround ourselves with really, really smart people. Try to have a controlled environment to where we meet, delegate, set expectations, hold people accountable. And today we do that on a pretty good scale. We've learned we got to get better every day. We know that. We got a long way to go. But we have the foundation here with our leadership and then with the base of our staff to really grow it. And that's been a little bit difficult on getting all that going. It wasn't difficult on making those decisions because we knew we had to do it, because us 3 or 4 weren't going to be able to just do it ourselves. We were going to have to back up, lead more, set more expectations, delegate more, give people responsibility, realizing they're going to make mistakes. And then we see those mistakes every single day, including yesterday. All right. And we have to learn from it. And hopefully that sometimes we can absorb those mistakes and move on, and that people learn from mistakes. And that's what happened as we've grown, including us making mistakes as owners, a lot of them. But we just keep pushing ahead as entrepreneurs and trying to scale the business. And today we have a $100 million company and roughly 80 employees, and here we go.
So successful entrepreneurs are confident, bold, very competitive. All of those things lead to, and you said you want to bring in people that think differently than you, but at the core have the same values. And we've talked about that before as well. You're not going to bring in somebody that's not going to live up to the 10 core values that we have. So let's now fast forward to, let's say today, we've got 85 people. We have an executive team, and then we have another level of leadership right below that that's coming along and developing. Bold, confident, competitive. And Brett and I can probably laugh at this, but there's plenty of days where we're sitting in here where those different perspectives lead to some pretty interesting conversations. Probably once a week, Brett and I nod at each other and say, let's go have a beer while these two duke it out, or while somebody else in here is duking it out. So talk a little bit about the how you get through the tough conversations and how you still walk out of the room on the same page.
Well, let me just answer for a second, then I want to hear from Brett and Chris on both of this, because we have knocked down dragouts in here, as you know. It's gotten a lot better as we've become closer working together. And we always talk about, and we say it in our company, that family is the most important thing, not only for us, but for all of our people that work for us. This job is down there, number 3 or 4 or 5, wherever it lands, all right, in different people's perspective that work for us. And for us, it almost never stops. And whether Chris and I and Brett and Ken are out, probably, or we're on vacation together, or we're at Christmas together, or we're at a birthday together, there are some backroom conversations that always are going on about business. And we try not to let that creep in there. And we realize that and I realize first and foremost that I try to keep it separate, but it doesn't always, because there may have been something that came up that day that we may be together that night, and it's still there, all right? And it's hard to cut it off sometimes. But we have to stop and realize that these guys have, between them, Chris has 5 kids, Brett has 3 kids, Ken has 3 children. In the business in here, we have my brother working in here, my grandson working in here, nephew working in here. These are all part of our family. And it's kind of a fine line that we have to walk, and but we all know that we're in here and people are looking at us every day. We have 80 people that are watching us. They're expecting leadership. They're expecting us to perform every day. We feel responsible for all of these people and their families and their kids to provide the proper leadership for them to know that they're on a good foundation here, and we're going to continue to grow.
Either one of you guys want to jump in on that? This is for the folks out there listening that may be in your dad's chair or in your chair with a family, getting to a point where they're going to scale up. Those tough conversations about growth and new business ideas and things that different perspectives bring around the table. How do you manage that and still be family?
Well, it is hard for sure. There's several reasons it's hard. To me, it's because we're passionate, because we care, because we want to win. I mean, we care about this business. We care about our, as I'm sure you guys have talked about on here, the 4 groups of people we serve. We care about our employees. We care about our vendors. We care about our tenants. We care about our investors. And most of all, we want to win, whether that's being the best turnkey company, whether that's being the best property management company, whether that's being the best company to work for. And when you're so passionate about it, that's going to lead to heated moments. But we realize that at the end of the day, we have another role together besides being partners, and that's family. So there's been many days where we disagree on something, again, because we care. We're so passionate about it. We might be arguing back and forth. Usually that's them too. I sit in between them and laugh. But at the end of the day, we have to realize when we shut the doors and go home that we can go earlier this week and have birthday dinner for our dad and realize that, I may have gotten pissed off and disagreed with something he said earlier, but that doesn't change at the end of the day that he's my dad and we're celebrating his 67th birthday. He might be getting mad at me. I just aged him. But no, I mean, that's if if we didn't care, if we weren't so passionate about it, then we wouldn't be so emotional about it. And because we are, that allows us to have those moments and then totally separate those at the end of the day when we all go home.
What was the question again?
Do you want to add on anything to that as far as just balancing family with business when it's all together all day long?
Yeah, I think that the one thing we all, and I really do like what Brett said, because he's right. We all think that we're right. I especially am never wrong when I'm trying to argue about something.
That is true.
And I argue passionately. But
that is also true.
If I didn't trust Brett and my dad, and ultimately know that we're all trying to get to the same place, which is a level of excellence, and because you will never be perfect, there's always this striving to get there, then I would, if I didn't trust them, then I wouldn't be able to walk out of here and then, as Brett said, go to dinner, laugh, talk, cut up, and don't worry about the decision that wasn't made, or that the fact that I still have to try and convince them that I'm right. That just starts back up tomorrow. We're all trying to go to the same spot. If I truly thought that I was right and they were wrong on something, and I wanted to argue about it and didn't think that they were coming from a place of passion or a place of wanting to do what's best for our company and our team and our residents and our owners, well, then it would be impossible to go to dinner and be okay. You know what I mean? So, because I think that we're all trying for the same thing, I just happen to fervently believe that I'm always right. That's why we kind of argue and go back and forth the way we do.
So for the business owner out there listening, you heard the word trust probably 4 or 5 times in this conversation, not only among you three as owners and family, but also among the people you've brought in to put in place. And that goes both ways. We have to trust that you guys are in here doing the best thing for the company. And we hear it going on outside the office sometimes, that the voices get elevated. We know you're in here arguing for what's going to be best for everybody in the long run. So,
well, and again, yesterday afternoon we came back in here and we had 4 or 5 subjects that we talked about at lunch yesterday. All right, that I kept referring to them yesterday afternoon. We talked about what we did. That's pretty much what consumes us when we're here and when we step out for lunch together. And it's not a lot. There's not a lot. I don't try to bother anybody on the weekend or at night. And I always tell people, you're on call 24/7. All right. But very, very rarely would I ever bother anybody at night or anybody on the weekend, including these guys. And we try to shut it down, and we're always available for our residents and our investors and our employees and our vendors if there's an emergency situation. We have those disciplines in place to handle those situations when they come up, because we do have 4,500 residents, all right, and there's going to be situations. So we have those things in place, and people that have to overlook those and oversee those in time of need. But we realize that we don't want to get anybody burnt out either. And but we do have high expectations for us as a family. And there's probably more on these guys and our other family members that are working in the business. I probably put more on those guys because they're kind of in the spotlight, and people are watching them and looking at them, and we have to realize that as family, that people out there are watching Blake and Drew and Terry and then us. And they expect us to perform at a high level every single day. But at the same time, we're no better than anybody else. And I caution and urge people who are in a family business, and we talk about it, and I talk about it, that we're all on the same level here. And if you get into business as a family in business and your employees, and you try to distance yourself from them and put yourself on a different level than people that work for you, then you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. And it just cannot be that way. And Chris and I and Brett try to get around to all of our business, all of our offices every day, see all of our people, cut up with them, talk to them, be with them some. And that's part of, we're not sitting in some ivory tower somewhere better than everybody else. It's just not that way here. And it can't be that way. Yes, we're responsible. We make the majority of the decisions, but we also have tremendous amount of respect for all the people that work for us every single day and come in here and grind and show up this week like we have this week with ice and snow on the ground, and 95% of our people show up here to do a job every single day. We're lucky to have those kind of people. But that's the kind of people we go want to hire. And that's why that's part of the business is so important. So we want to set the proper example too.
To a question you asked earlier, Kevin, and I'm glad you just said that, Dags. It's part of what I didn't say it earlier, but you asked how do you hire people and how do you the exact question escapes me, but you were asking something about how do you go out and hire people and trust them. And one of the I said one of the mistakes that early entrepreneurs make is they hire somebody to do something they don't like and they place that person beneath them. That happens often, and that because it's something I don't like to do and it's not as important to me, I'm going to bring somebody in. Therefore, they're not as important to me, and they're down here, they're below me, and I'm the owner and the runner of the place. And I think it's one of the best questions you can ask, because as Ken Sr. just said, there's no doubt who runs the place here and who the buck stops at a certain location, and it's right here with us at this table. But the best question you can ask anybody that's on your team is, what do you think? And that's a question that gets asked around this table on a daily basis, sometimes on an hourly basis. And that's the best way to let people know as you're building a company that, I may be in charge, but your opinion matters. And so tell me what you think. That's a great way to let people know that you're on an even playing field. Because sometimes that can come across as just a platitude, like we're all equal. That's not, people would say, what does that really mean? Well, that means that you're willing to say, tell me what you think. I'll take your opinion, your thoughts, your ideas into consideration when I make the final call. And that's a big deal for building a team that, again, go back to that word you said, that you highlighted, Kevin, a team that trusts you and trusts each other. Right. That's a great way to do it.
Good birthday episode.
I think today's been pretty good. And again, every time we can get these two guys on here with us, they always jump out whenever we have this podcast coming up because they don't want to be in here. But we kind of corralled both of them today.
I think they're afraid to make noise.
No, they're not. They both have very strong opinions, believe me, okay? And so let's wind up. Chris and Brett, any final comments? Brett?
Not for me.
Give us something that we haven't heard about you today, all right?
Got nothing.
I learned something new.
You did? You learned? What did you learn, Kevin?
I didn't know Brad had a lawnmower business or a lawn and landscape business. That's good stuff.
Yep, he was out there doing. Did I help you do that or something? Come by and supervise it or something?
What about that?
I doubt that.
Now, I remember being over here at Miss Beatty's house over here in Cordova, helping you overseeing that when you were doing that. So I remember that. Chris, you got anything else for us? Winding up?
Yeah, Kevin. How much time do I have? How much?
I think we're done.
Maybe next episode.
That's right.
Kevin, what else today?
That's it. If you got any questions or comments for us, leave a review on iTunes, SoundCloud, MemphisInvest.com is where this will be hosted. So appreciate everybody listening.
Well, hopefully that some people out there that are in business and family, there's a couple little tidbits that you can take out of this today. As Kevin said, we're doing this on video and audio today. So those of you that have never seen what Chris and Brett look like, this will be up on the Memphis Invest website here.
I'm pretty confident people know what Chris looks like.
And hopefully we brought you some good content today. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Experience Matters. You can listen and subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. Be sure to visit us at MemphisInvest.com.